Assalamualaikum everyone, hope you all are going great and welcome back to my channel, welcome back to another video, welcome back to another lecture. So once again I'm with you guys with another interesting lecture. So today we're gonna go through physical and chemical changes. Once again we are gonna study about physical and chemical changes. So today we are gonna study about it. So if you have any question or any issue to my sense, you can comment on any of my video. I'll go through that as soon as possible. And don't forget to hit the bell icon so that you get a notification of every video. And today we're going to study about rusting of iron. So rusting of iron, so rusting is a phenomenon of reddish brownish coating forming on the surface of iron due to action of wet air. So due to the wet air that is present, the action of that wet air, the coating or the reddish brown coating forming on the surface of iron due to action of wet air. So it's that phenomenon. This is basically what rusting is. So and the reddish brownish coating is referred to as rust. So the phenomenon of reddish brownish coating forming on the surface of iron due to action of wet air is rusting, and the reddish brownish coating itself is referred to rust. Okay. So simply said, rust is a red brown flaky substance that forms when an iron object is exposed to wet air for an extended period of time. So basically now this is that what is being simply said inside in this whole these two lines. What is it said is explained over here that rust is a red brown flaky substance which forms when an iron object is exposed of wet air for an extended period of time. So extended period of time means for an existent period of time. Okay. Then rusting of exhaust systems and vehicles bodywork, water pipes, and many other sorts of structural setworks are all well-known instances. Now, these are the rusting of exhaust systems. Now, the combined action of air and water on iron causes to rust. Now, you should know which action causes an iron to rust. A combined action of water and air. So, when water and air are gonna combine, and then they're gonna do an action on the iron, it's gonna rust. So rusting does not happen in a fully dry air or in that is completely devoid of water. So you should also notice the what are the conditions of rusting. So first of all, rusting do not happen in fully dry air. So if there is a fully dry air, rusting is not gonna take place, or in an air that is completely devoid of water, or in air which is completely devoid of water. That means that a fully air or fully water. So rusting is not gonna take place from that type of metal or iron. Okay. Amount needs to be, the atmospheric conditions and the relative contributions of the components that regulate rusting define the particular composition of the rust. Now here there is also composition of the rust. So during rusting, iron combines with oxygen in the air in the presence of water to generate iron, a hydrated iron oxide. Okay. So basically during resting, what does happen, that iron combines with oxygen in air. So the iron that is present, that combines with oxygen, and oxygen is present in the air in the presence of water. Now water is also present to generate what, to generate a hydrated iron oxide. So for generating, for making an hydrated iron oxide, this this hydrated iron oxide is referred to as a rust. So now this the iron oxide, this hydrated iron oxide is referred to as rust. So this is the form of rust. It's a rust. Rust is largely hydrated iron oxide, like which gives us a hydrated iron oxide as a result. Now the color of rust is reddish brownish. Now you should know the color of rust. So you should know that what's the actual color of rust. So it is reddish brownish. Reddish brownish is the color of rust. So rust. Okay. Now we have all noticed reddish brown rust on iron nails, screws, pipes, and railings. Like once in your life, you have been seeing that, because it is a very well known, part of the chemical changes. Because rusting takes place almost in all the iron objects or all the iron objects you have. when exposed to wet air, not just iron but also steel rusts. So it's not that only iron rusts, steel also rusts. Okay, steel on the other hand is more resistant to rust than iron. Now it is more familiar to iron than the it's more, it gets attached to more rust as compared to the iron. Now here this is the chemical, this is the word equation and the chemical equation of rusting. Now iron plus oxygen plus water will give you hydrated iron oxide. Okay, then which hydrated, which is rust. Okay, hydrated iron oxide which means rust. Now mechanical okay, no chemicals for rusting. Now you should know what are the chemicals for rusting. So air and water. Now no water, no air, air and salt. So rusting requires oxygen and water. Rusting, now you should know that rusting requires both oxygen and water. So air and water, water air, no water, no air, these both cannot be. Air and salt water. So I think so over here the first one is gonna be the rust chemical for rusting, because you should know that always rusting requires oxygen and water. So rusting is speeded up by salt, so salt can also be speeded up by rusting. Okay, now prevention. A few suggestions are to protect and do not allow any material made up of metal to be left in open. So what you need to do that you do not you protect and do not allow material to. Now you should not left any metal or material made up of metal to open, like you should not make them open. Okay, close them. Apply a coating of another metal that does not get rusted easily. This is also called galvanizing. So galvanizing, now what is galvanizing? That you can also coat another metal that like you think this metal does not rust easily, so you can coat that metal on other metal to keep it safe. Okay, paint the exposed part of the metal object. So this is also a way of protecting it. Like you can paint exposed part, like exposed part means the part that is rusted, you can paint that, okay, of the metal object. Now rusting of iron can be prevented by painting. How? So coating the surface of the iron with paint is the most popular way to keep it from rusting. Okay, when the paint is placed on the surface of an iron object, it prevents air and moisture from getting into touch with the object, preventing rusting. So now here when you're gonna paint the surface of an iron object, so we are, it's what is gonna do is it's gonna prevent air and moisture from getting touch into it. Now it's gonna allow the air and moisture to touch the wall or to touch the object. So like this, it's going to prevent from rusting. To prevent rusting, window grills, railings, iron bridges, steel furnishings, railway coaches, and the bodies of automobiles, buses, trucks, among other things, all are painted on regular basis. Okay. Rusting of iron can be prevented by applying grease or oil. Now, when grease or oil is placed on the surface of an iron object, air and moisture does not come into contact with it, preventing corrosion. Now, this is also a way of preventing rusting from iron nail. Rusting of iron from applying grease or oil. So when you're gonna apply grease or oil, now what's gonna happen? The surface is gonna take place of an iron. Now air and moisture is not gonna be touched to the surface of that thing, come in contact with that thing. So now here rusting is gonna be prevented. Iron and steel tools and machine parts are rubbed with grease or oil to prevent corrosion. Okay. Rusting of iron can be prevented by galvanization. Now, galvanization is a process of coating steel or iron with zincs. Okay, so it protects the underlying metal. Now, galvanization protects articles exposed to excessive moisture, such as roof sheets and pipelines, against rusting. Galvanization is a technique of applying a thin layer of zinc to steel and iron to prevent rusting. Now, what is it? It's a technique. Now, in this technique, you need to apply a thin layer of zinc to steel and iron, okay, to prevent rusting. Now, galvanized iron is iron that has been zinc coated. Now you should know what is galvanized iron. Now it's an iron that has been zinc coated. Zinc is more reactive than iron. Now therefore the presence of moisture that interact with oxygen to generate an invisible layer of zinc oxide that protects it from further rusting. Now it's going to protect it from further rusting. Now it's worth noting that even if the zinc coating on galvanized iron products is broken, they may remain rust free because zinc is more effective than iron. This is the case. Now you should know that zinc is more reactive than iron. Tarnishing of silver. Now tarnishing is the word that generally means a fine layer of corrosion on a metallic metal surface, not due to formation of a compound. Okay, now here like silver tarnishing happen due to the formation of silver sulfide on the surface, which turns the color of silver dark, and that mostly happens with the jewelry. Now tarnishing a gradual process. It can also happen with oxygen when silver is exposed too much. Like here you're having silver plus oxygen plus hydrogen sulfur. Now here it's gonna give you that oxygen and hydrogen sulfide are present in the air. Now the thus formation of a hydrogen silver oxygen and hydrogen sulfide basically causes threatening. Okay, now this is a basically object that has been rusted. A silver object has been rusted. So to avoid tarnishing and keeping up the shine of silver items, they must be cleaned with soap, water, and solution of ammonia. Okay, silver items must be kept in cool places to avoid sunlight pollution and chemical exposure like perfumes and hairspray. So whenever it's a caution for you that if you're having jewelry and you are perfuming and you're spraying any perfume, so you are not to touch that perfume with the jewelry, with your earrings, with your necklace, with your in your hands. We mostly do where we have silver bangles or sometimes bracelets. So you are not to touch that air spray or perfume with these silver objects. What will happen? They are gonna rust easily. Okay, so I'm gonna keep it away from them. Okay, chemical and physical properties of matter. Now chemical and physical properties of matter. So properties of a matter. So can the property be determined without changing the identity of the substance? So there are two cases in it, yes and no. So no in chemical properties like reactivity, flammability, toxicity, and then ability to oxidize, combustion. And then yes in the case of physical properties like the. Now how does the property depend upon on the amount of the substance? So yes and no, both are present. So no as in structure related like duality, color, luster, odor, malleability, conductivity, hardness, ductility, melting point, boiling point. And yes in the case of amount related like mass, volume, weight. Then physical properties. So physical properties is one of the measure without changing the material. Now you can measure the physical property without changing the metal like material, like color, amount, hardness, and temperature are the examples of physical properties. Okay, now thermoconductivity is an ability of substance to conduct heat. Like how much heat a substance can conduct is known as thermoconductivity. Ductility, the ability of shape to or drawn into a wire. Now you can change the shape of something or you can draw it into a wire is known as ductility. Now malleability, ability to be hammered in a sheet. You can hammer one thing into a sheet, that's known as malleability. Now melting point is the temperature at which is a solid changes into liquid. You know what it. Boiling point is the temperature at which liquid boils and converts into vapor. You also may know what it. Then solubility. Now it's a maximum amount of solute that can be dissolved in a certain amount of solvent at a particular temperature. Now solubility basically means that you're having a maximum amount of solute present, and then you have you have to dissolve it in a certain amount of solvent. Now there's a certain amount you have to dissolve the solute into that, and that temperature should also be particular. So there's a particular temperature for that as well. Chemical properties. A chemical property is a characteristic of substance that can only be observed and measured by performing a chemical reaction or chemical change. So this is well to be known that physical properties can be determined without changing the shape or anything of the appearance of the object or material. But here in chemical property, the characteristic, it's basically the characteristic of substance, and you can only observe or measure it if you perform a chemical reaction on the substance. In other words, you have to change the chemical identity of a substance or rearrange its internal structure to know its chemical properties, like its example of flammability, rusting, and reactivity. Now, a chemical property is a characteristic of a substance that may be observed when it participates in a chemical change. So you can only observe it when it participates in any chemical change or chemical reaction. To identify a chemical property, we look for a chemical change. Okay, so a chemical change always produces one or more type of matter that can be different from the matter present before the change. Okay, so it can produce different matters that are different from the matter that was produced before the change. Okay, The explosion of nitrogen is a chemical reaction because the gases produced are very different kinds of matter from the original substances. Now it's an example of that. Now here you can see danger. So this is a sign of high flammable. Then this is a sign of no smoking. Then sign of no open flames. Okay. Then flammability. Now what's flammability? Is defined as how easy a substance can burn. So how easy a substance can burn is known as flammability. When matter burns, it combines with oxygen and changes to different substances. You should also know that when any matter burns, it basically combines with oxygen and changes into different substances. Now, what is an example of flammable matter? However, chemicals like gasoline, acetone, dilithium, either are hazardous as they initiate at moderate temperatures. You must have seen hazardous signs at certain places like petrol stations and on products like perfume sprays, etc. So I hope so that today's lecture. Bye bye, take care, and love you. See you in next video.